Okay, looks like we live. Give me one second. Let me share it. All right. Now, why did it kick me out? Sorry, y'all. It is doing something weird. Oh, there it is. I usually do this on my my computer, so I'm able to see what's going on. All right. Sorry about all the mishaps, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining. It's your girl, your host with the most, your favorite chick to chit chat with, Miss Mo. And we are here tonight with another live episode of Confessions and Conversations. And I have two amazing ladies here to join in the conversation with me. We have Laverne Thomas and we have Prophetess Sherelle Shelby. All right, guys. All right, let's dig in. So tonight's episode, we're talking about being a daddy's girl. So I, unlike everybody, but some people do, have a mentor and a great relationship with my spiritual mom. And so during one of our sessions, she was telling me how I tend to see God a lot as master and servant, and what that relationship looks like and how it differs from that of seeing God as father and myself as daughter. And so we had unpacked some things, and I didn't have intentions on going through all I went through with her that night. However, it was an emotional time, but it brought me to wanting to have this conversation. And so to do so, I thought, who better to bring on than some ladies who were actually raised, who were daddy's girls, who had those deep, intimate relationships with their father, those loving relationships. And I just want to explore a little bit about what those relationships.
I think she's frozen.
Yes.
Hopefully she'll come back on in a second.
Is it frozen? Can y'all hear me? Oh,
there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
What's going on? Oh, we bagged up all these technical issues. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead. Who wants to start off?
Well, we didn't hear your question, but if you had one, but if you want to just go ahead and flow, I'm okay with that too.
So you mean I was froze all that time?
Yeah.
You really was.
That is so not cute. So what I was saying was, but y'all got the intro part, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what I want to do is just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then after each one of you tell us a little bit about yourself, then we'll get into the conversation about your relationships with your fathers.
Okay. I'll jump in. My name is Laverne Thomas. I am the owner of Bliss Dream Love Coaching, which is a faith-based coaching service for women who have been through divorce. And so that's our one-on-one services. We try to help women go from breakthrough to boss up, whether it is to transition into owning a business, to fill that financial gap that divorce creates, strengthen your relationship with your Heavenly Father, start a ministry, whatever it is your heart desires that you feel is actually leveling up or bossing up your life after you've been broken. That's what we help you do. And then our corporate side is we do a ton of diversity, inclusion, culture and climate in the workplace, adding women to the table, adding women to the conversations and decision making. So I'm all things her, she, I, daddy's girl, individually, personally, and professionally. So that
Come
is
on.
us in a nutshell.
Okay, well, I'll go next. I am Prophetess Sherelle Shelby. I am the wife of Apostle Larry, which
Come on.
on August the 14th will be 28 years for us. So I am excited about that. I am the owner and CEO of Simply Elegant Enterprises, which is the major corporation of the business. And then we have Accuracy, which I am a notary signing agent. So I do a lot of the closing paperwork for title companies. Then we have Intimacy, which is a marriage and family. That's getting ready to take off and launch on this year. So I am really excited about Intimacies. And we are going to really begin to tap into the wholesome family, wholesome marriages. And then we're going to tap into how you as a minister and minister's wife can raise healthy children in ministry. And so a lot of times, you know, in raising our children in ministry, a lot of times PK kids have the labels, they have all of these titles, they go through all of these things, but guess what? They don't have to go through that. So we're going to deal with some of that. And then we started a nonprofit called the Porch of Solomon. So we do a lot here. We do a lot. We really do. But then we relocated to Texas, and now we're getting ready to plant ministry here with our Apostle Angela L. Tebow. So we are really excited about what God is doing. It seems like a lot. It is a lot, but guess what? God has graced us to do just that. So that's who I am.
So we got one for those sisters who, you know, y'all may not have been able to, you know, make it work, stay in it, and you got divorced, but we got one sister here that's going to help you and let you know, listen, that is life after divorce. You still will shine. You still can build. You still can live. You still can be great. All that good stuff. She
That's
got
right.
Bliss. What is it? Bliss Dream Love?
Bliss Dream Love coaching.
Bliss Dream Love. Come on. And for those of you still connected that's considering, listen, brother is getting on all 12 of your last nerves. Y'all can go ahead and connect with the Shelbys over there. It's Intimacy, right?
Yes, Intimacy.
And go ahead and get the help you need and keep that marriage together, long lasting and everything. Our marriages don't end in divorce, but some of them do. So whichever route you're taking, I got a sister on here that can help you. Amen.
All right, all angles.
That is awesome. I didn't even know that, but look how that just all lined up and connected. So, but what we're here to talk about tonight is being a daddy's girl. So I didn't grow up with my father. I didn't have a consistent relationship with the man who's supposed to be my daddy. And so even as I got older and we reconnected, the interactions and exchanges in that union, in that relationship, still weren't all that well. And I almost feel like it hurt more as an adult than it did as a child with the disappointment, because you got so much going on as a kid. You let me just go outside and play, mom. Mom may let you stay out longer, a little half an hour longer, past the street lights or something like that. You know, so you kind of, for me, in the moment, it seemed like I got over, even though it was still creating and building things inside of me that I wasn't aware of. But as an adult, you understand it all, even in that moment. So it kind of rests a little different. So I do know how that has affected other relationships. But tonight we want to talk about some that were really good, that were really healthy, and from those who really love their daddies. So Laverne, since you started to introduce yourself, we're going to go ahead and start the relationship piece off with Sherelle.
Oh, wow.
So go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and your daddy.
So mine's a little different, and I'm glad that, because you have everybody's aspect of relationship is totally different. So you have, like, my daughters growing up, they grew up with their dad in the home. And so that relationship, that's a one-sided relationship. Well, my dad was not in the house, inside of the home, but we had a relationship. And so, well, my relationship was a little bit challenged. So, it's going to correlate naturally and spiritually, because how a lot of times our lives mirror each other. Whatever happens in the natural, you can see it in the spirit. But anyway, so my mom and my dad divorced when I was 4. And so I met my dad when I was 8. Now, I was always a daddy's girl. And so once I got it back in him, it was, fought tooth and nail to be around him, wanted to be around him, wanted to love him. And my daddy he's very, very loving person. And so we just developed that relationship. And, we would talk, I wanted to sit on his lap. I wanted to hear everything he said. I hung on every word he said. He was just that dad. But the difference with mine was he wasn't in the home. And because of the relationship dynamic between him and my mom, I had to fight to see him. So it was totally different. I had to fight to see him. I had to, kind of search him out, because sometimes they don't search you out. And I always used to say, after growing up, is that whatever happened between them was between them. That had nothing to do with me. So I didn't allow whatever that relationship was to filter here, to kind of put bitterness and all that kind of stuff in my heart. I didn't do that. I just allowed him to be daddy to me. But it was a different level and a different relationship. And there were times when he was there. There were times where he wasn't there. But the time that he wasn't there, God always had somebody in the midst for me. He always had somebody in the midst for me. So after I got into high school and got into church very, very heavily, my pastor became that dad for me. And so same thing, always look to him. And I think I was a little different. I think because I always ran everything past my dad. Dad, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And if he said, oh, no, don't do it. I was always one, I just didn't do it. Some people rebelled and some people didn't. But when it came to certain things, I just did. I'm like, okay, he said, don't do it. Don't do it. So I didn't do it because I trusted him. I knew he had my back. I knew he loved me and I knew he cared, so I wanted to do everything that made him happy or that pleased him, because that was my dad and I looked up to him. And so we had a really, really good relationship. I could talk to him about any and everything. It was nothing that was too hard for me to talk to him about, but mine was, as I say, different. I had to seek him out. I had to, there were times when he didn't seek me out. I had to seek him out. There was times where I couldn't find him. I had to go look, so that was my relationship in the natural. So let's bring that over to the spiritual side. So
before you go there,
we
just want to talk about the natural side right now. Okay. You're getting ahead of me. All right. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about your relationship with your dad, Laverne.
My dad and I were 2 peas in a pod. I don't think it could have been any better of a relationship. So my dad is deceased now, but I was premature when I was born. So I have 8 siblings. So I'm the 5th child. So I was premature. And that, I believe, brought a closeness that was different from my other 8 siblings. Because my father, they told my father and my mom, of course, that I wasn't going to make it, prepare for her, funeral and so forth and all that stuff. And when I made it, thank you, Father. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Yes. My dad just clung to me. So we were the best of friends. We did everything together. I went everywhere with him. If he didn't let me go with him, I was upset. I was sad. Just like Sherelle, I ran everything past him, even if it was my clothes, even if it was where I was going. Like, I tried my best to let him know where I was. I wanted to know where he was. So we grew up in the same house together. Him and my mom were married. Death is what separated them. But we were really, really tight. Even when I went away to college, my dad didn't want me to go that far. But when we went away, that was the only time we didn't speak. We didn't speak for 2 months because he was mad because I left, because he wanted me to go to university locally. But when we finally reconnected, and it was like the worst of not talking to him. Like you felt that missing, like you missed something. And as soon as we were back on, like up until the day he died, we were just always together. And my father passed from cancer, and the last couple of months his memory was going, but he remembered me.
Come on.
And he remembered names and faces and stuff like that, but he remembered that I was his daughter, and when he needed something, he came to me, and it was just amazing. So I don't have a complaint at all about my relationship with my father. It was absolutely amazing to me.
Would either one of you consider yourself spoiled?
Oh yeah.
When it came here?
Yes. What was Sherelle? What would you say?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you got something coming up. You need something. Who are you going to first, mom or dad?
My daddy.
Well, like I said, mine was a little bit different because my dad was not in the home. So a lot of times I went to my mom, but then I knew how to get to him. So if I got a no from mom, guess who I was looking at?
Come on, daddy.
Yes, I was going to find that way to get to him. Okay, hey, where you at today, or where you at? This is what I need. So yeah, I was very spoiled.
Were there ever things that you were afraid to bring to your father?
I was afraid to tell my father when I was pregnant. I actually lied to him. I'm so sorry, but I lied to him because my ex-husband and I were not married then. So my son came a year before our wedding, and when we sat down, we took them out to dinner and told them, because I was so nervous. I said, my father was just like, I didn't even know you did those type of things. And I'm like, I didn't, Daddy. This was the first time, and it just happened. Daddy believed, and I was 28.
Had a very experience.
Yes, I was 28, and my dad believed me. So that was the only time I was scared to tell him anything. Other than that, I told him everything he wanted to know.
Well, I think with me, I was scared to disappoint him. I think that was the thing for me. I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want to see him upset. I didn't want to see him, and then I didn't want to get a whooping. Yeah, that was another thing, because you knew that was coming down the pike in a very few minutes. So yeah,
and see, I grew up in a house with a lot of disciplinarians. Like my grandmother had 5 children. She had 4 girls and 1 boy, and my uncle was in the middle. So although I wasn't raised with my father, I had my grandfather and I had my uncle. They both went to work. They both had jobs. They were both very stern. Granddaddy would come home, he would line up the quarters on the table, and since I wasn't the oldest grandchild, but I was generally the oldest one around, so he would line up the quarters. We knew to go to the store and get whatever we were going to get, and then like he'd be like, Monique, here goes so-and-so, call Coleman's, because we stayed right down the street from Coleman's on the west side, and he would be like, call Coleman's and order y'all whatever y'all want to eat, and then you walk down there, you take them, y'all go to the store, and y'all come right back. And so I had that type of relationship with him. But I mean, and I can ask my grandfather for stuff as I got older and needed help with things, and I knew I was gonna get it. He talk crazy, be like, and I want all my money back. I'll be like, all right, big leg. And so then you'll come and you'll bring the money. He'd be like, I don't want that. Just keep it. Like, but I always brought it back. Can never say that one didn't bring me my money. But it was still a difference. That was my grandfather. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I really valued that relationship because you weren't my father. And to some degree, you feel like a parent, although they don't always operate in that system, but you feel like they're supposed to be there. Like they have an obligation to be there. So there's an expectation that you should, you know what I mean? But with granddaddy, you raised your kids. My mama was your child, you know what I'm saying? But still have that relationship. But they were all disciplinary. My uncle with me, my granddad didn't ever have to whip me, but my grandma, Lord to mercy, and granddaddy had this belt. So I had a relationship with father figures in my life, but there was still a difference for me. And I guess because of the relationship with who is my biological father, it kind of put a different, I don't know, a different mentality with a father and his daughter. So when it came to, which we can go into now, the relationship with God, I guess I still saw it as the disciplinarian because that's what I got. There wasn't an expectation. And then you hear how a lot of daddy's girls talk about how they was spoiled. Like, I can go to my daddy for anything. If something pop off, you be like, that's all right. I'm going to tell my daddy. That's why I got my ponytail. Take us back to them little girl days. But it's like, I'm going to tell my daddy because you know, man, not nobody mess with daddy's baby. But there was a rest in that, a security. That's what it is. There was a security in those relationships that I feel like I didn't have. And so even in my relationship with God, I trust him. But I've even had relationship where God has pointed out to me, even when you come before me, you come before me with an agenda. You come before me expecting certain things. And it's like, I approach him as I'm in trouble. If I do this, I get this. And I remember someone saying that there's a sense of inheritance and entitlement that you have from the Father that I literally struggle with God. I feel like I have to do in order to get. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't have that in most of the relationships in the natural. That's how it was. It was an exchange. You give me this and I'll give you that. So that thing of I love you and I do it just because I love you. I do it because I want to care for you. I do it because I want to see you happy. I do it because I know it's something you need. I don't know that relationship. You know what I'm saying? It's challenging for me to rest in that. So with everything as I approach him, I feel like there's something I have to do in order to get what he has for me. So how does your relationships mirror how does your relationships with God as Father, as Abba, mirror your relationships with your natural father?
That's good. Am I jumping in first, Sharia?
Go ahead.
That's really good, Prophet Monique, because I didn't see it like that until my father passed away. So I had a relationship with God, of course, you know, church girl, all of that amazing stuff. But I saw it as this is God, you know, like, oh my goodness, this is God, you know, you pray and all of that. But it was one day I was in church a few months after my father passed away, and I was in worship, and I was just really, that pain was just really hitting me. And God kept saying, daddy's girl, that's all I kept hearing. And I'm like, I know I'm a daddy's girl. That's why it's hurting so bad. Like, I get it. He was like, no, you are a daddy's girl. I gave you specifically that type of relationship with your father so that you can see who I am as your father now. And every woman I send to you that does not have an earthly father, it's your assignment to show her who I am. So that's what I do in my coaching. And when he told me that, it literally changed the game for me, because I'm like, I am a spoiled brat. So what did my daddy used to always tell me? You can have whatever you want. Just like you said, Monique, you can have whatever you want. Don't let nobody mess with you. The world is yours. If you need something, I'm the one you come to. And I'm like, that's it. So I started talking to him. I say father, but I pray intimately, it's daddy. You know, this is what's going on. Daddy, this is how I feel. Literally how I would talk to my natural father is how my relationship is, and greater with God now that I understand that daddy's girl. Because you're right. Like, I look at it when I'm coaching women, I try to help rebuild them from that aspect. Like, did you know your father is a king? So if your daddy is a king, you got an inheritance. Like, it's a standard of living you're supposed to have. Like, you are heir to a throne, sis. Like, you got to get this understanding. So you got to be able to build that relationship with your father. And when you say stuff like that, light bulbs, go off, and hearts start beating and spirits start leaping, because nobody really explains it to us like that. That literally is he's our father, and daddy's girls get whatever they want. If you come to him, you literally get whatever you want. You just have to believe and you have to ask for it. So I believe because I had that relationship with my natural father, and when he gave me that aha in service is the reason why my relationship is the way it is. And I don't think that everybody has that experience because it's not explained and it's not felt, so that's my assignment. Whenever I coach a woman, that's the first thing that we getting down to business with, to make sure that you understand who your father is.
Wow, that's good.
And hold on one second before you go, Sherelle, because I think what happened, something you touched on in that, Laverne, was how we're not taught that, because a lot of times our introduction to God is God, sin, hellfire, and brimstone.
That's
you
right.
know what I'm saying? We're not necessarily introduced to him as God the Father, God the provider. You know what I'm saying? We learn about Jesus, our Redeemer. You know what I'm saying? Redeemer means that there's something he's pulling us back from. The wages of sin is death. So now you got all this stuff, and it's like sin, death, Redeemer, stripes, all this stuff. It's like, hold on, wait a minute. Do I really want this relationship? Instead of first introducing us to that relationship as of him as father, then it becomes this thing where you have this reverence for him, this love, this adoration for him, which is what we should have, which then helps prevent you from doing stuff, like you said, I didn't want to disappoint my father.
That's right.
I didn't want to get in trouble. But it wasn't like you were introduced to him as this stern person. He was like, if you ever get out of line, I'm gonna whoop you with this belt. That wasn't how you were introduced to him. You were introduced to his love. You were introduced to his provision. You were introduced to his care. And so you developed that relationship with him. And then it was like, don't do this. And because I already loved you and I wanted to continue in the vein we were in, and this may disappoint you, then I'm going to try to steer away from it. And just in case I should happen to dip out there and slip in some stuff, I'm going to be a little nervous about having to come tell you about it because I know it was wrong. So it's love for him that will teach us right from wrong, that will help us be stronger in our right than, kicking it and laboring heavily in our wrong. So I think that was a really good point to pull out. We have to introduce even our young people, our children and things like that, introduce them to God as Abba, introduce them to God as Father.
That's right.
Introduce them to God who is love before you go into, but don't get on that wrath side because it ain't no pump. Wipe some stuff out. So, I think that's really good. And I really wanted to touch on that before we went in. So go ahead, Sherelle.
Well, I think this is so good. This is so good. And I remember saying to Monique, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be such a good topic, because I think it is. I think, like you said, we were not taught that, God, the Father, that's a relationship, because for me, it was like, I always felt like I had to run after him, or, I had to always search, as if he was not attainable, for me. And so when I think it clicked right before I got married. I was in college, and I lived with a bishop and his wife, which really showed me the whole relationship thing, because I got a chance to firsthand see what a healthy marriage was like, and then what a healthy, father-daughter relationship, because Bishop Blade was like a dad to me, so it really shifted my whole aspect and my whole vision of what that healthy relationship looked like. And the moment it clicked here was the moment my relationship with him clicked. Then then I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to do this. He unconditionally loves me. I don't have to run after him. He's always here. I don't have to, it's not a works thing. It's, I love you because, and so that was the thing that I had to get, is that he loves me because, period. Period. No, nothing behind, just because he loves me, and so when that clicked for me, it was like, it changed my whole view. And so by then I was ready to be married. But had I gotten married before then, I would have treated my husband the same way I treated God. But that's another whole. That's another whole. Because I always say that the way you view your dad and your relationship with your dad, if it's not healed, is you're gonna bring that all the way over into your marriage.
Come
And
on,
you really
intimacy.
are. You're gonna bring it over into your marriage. And so, but my thing was, and I said this to Mother Blade when I was there, and I said, if I could have a husband like Bishop Blade, then I want to be married, because I saw how he treated her. But I saw his relationship with God. You know, his life. I used to always tell him that if Bishop Blade didn't make it, we was all doomed, because he walked that kind of life. He lived that kind of life. And so, you know, so that's how I wanted my life to be with him, and then my life to be with my husband. But then I realized there were some things I even had to go back even in the times, because, you know, when there's a divorce as children, there's a lot of things you don't understand and you don't know. And so you tend to have these preconceived things in your head, like, okay, well, I know what this was. So I had to go back and get a clear understanding of what happened. And then me had to sometimes say, oh, Dad, well, I'm sorry, because I thought this was this way, or I thought this was that way. And so it even helped my relationship with God then, because I said, okay, so I have to adjust my life. I have to adjust my relationship to be able to walk in proper alignment with Christ. And so, yeah, so if your relationship with him is not where it needs to be, your relationship with your mate is going to be the exact same way.
I think that's so cool, because one of the things that your relationship with your dad and your relationship with God shows is how you as a daddy's girl and your dad not being in the home at times, but still fighting for that relationship. It's like, how many of us will fight for our relationship with God when there are so many distractions, so many things in the world that come at us? Sometimes it literally feels like I have to fight my way to you. There was this video that came out. It used to float around, usually around Easter, or maybe it was Christmas. I don't know. But it was this, see, my ponytail is falling. But it was about how there was this young lady and she had this relationship with God, and this guy was dressed in this white robe and they were dancing like they were in the field, and he would lift his hands, she lifted her hands. So everything they did, the movements were in sync. And so then there was this time where I think he kind of like did the little spin and spent her out. And when she went like this, she got caught up into alcohol, partying, prostitute, like all these other things started coming at her. And so she was sitting in there, and then they just started attacking her. And she found herself, she would just finally get down on her knees, and she was crying, because it was like she was trying to crawl her way back to Jesus, and he was standing there like, I'm here. And the more she tried to crawl and fight her way towards him, these other distractions and stuff were just pulling at her and pulling at her. And it was like she just couldn't get away. And so then it was this one point where Jesus kind of stepped in between her and all of these distractions, and she was down praying and crying, and he was just standing there, and they were still trying to come at her over him, and he was just standing there with his arms out, she's kneeled down. And then eventually it was this moment where he kind of did like this and knocked everything away, and then it shows her and him back dancing in the fields. He changes her clothes and, you know, puts a robe on her and all of these different things. And it was what the image portrayed and what it depicted. And it's that thing of sometimes life is full of distractions, and you have to make a choice to keep that relationship first. You sometimes have to fight your own thoughts, your own feelings to get to that relationship. But I just believe that once it's established, once the foundation is laid and it's a solid foundation, I don't care how you stray, I don't care how you fall, how you falter, he is still there and always waiting and welcoming for us to come back. And he has this. It's like, even though those distractions and stuff was going on, they could be there, they could stand off, but they could not take her out. And that was the thing. So even as you talked about how because of the dynamics between him and your mom, you had to fight, you know, to see him sometimes. So you have to fight for that relationship. And so that happens with us too in our relationship with God. Sometimes we're going to have to fight for our relationship because so many things are vying for our attention. And in the pandemic, sugar, listen, it's a whole lot of competing factors out here that you really got to go against to be able to focus and set aside that time, because life becomes heavy. And sometimes you have to just be like, hold on, push pause, let me get back to God. Let me put you back at the center. And so the other thing you talked about, Sherelle, your relationship with him that I thought was so absolutely amazing was that even when things change between you and your dad, your biological father, God put somebody else there. And it is just like God to see what's going on in our lives. And when he has something set in place, this is his perfect will. But when his perfect will is not what is fulfilled, he is still so awesome and so godlike that he'll set up some things and he'll adjust it and still get you what you need once the core relationship with him is established. And I just think that is absolutely dope. And so I can say, like I said, I've had people in my life, but I'm so doggone analytical that sometimes my mind, my brain, the way I think and process stuff gets in the way of my relationship with God. And that's what he told me many times. He was like, you can't even come to me and just lay out I literally have to fight to turn my brain off sometimes to have a conversation with God, to be able to even hear God, to the point where it was like, yo, dude, just shut it down for a minute or something and just pour in there what you want, override everything else that's going on. But I had to learn to manage my mind. I had to learn to manage my analytics so that I can shut them down. I just need to hear from God. And sometimes that meant shutting everybody out and reestablishing my connection with him. I may not have had an earthly intimate relationship with my father to mimic or to look to understand the connection between me and God. But it's a blessing to even see other people operate with their fathers and be like, girl, I just go ask my daddy. I'll be like, yeah, I never had that. You know what I'm saying? Right. God for things, I'll be like, so can I, but when you have that real relationship with your father, you be like, daddy, ice cream truck coming. It's not even can I have, it's just, let me tell you my need because I'm expecting you to meet it. You know what I'm saying? So when you don't have that foundational thing, you kind of go to God like you begging, nervous as to whether or not you're going to say, yeah. I've even found myself having conversations with him about stuff. I'm a woman, I want to be married. So even having a conversation with him about desiring that and what I want with my husband and the things that I want to do and experience with my husband, I find myself whispering. Sometimes it's like, like, can you interpret what I just said, sir?
That's funny.
Loud, but I just feel like when you have that natural relationship, it teaches you how to come to God as your father. And not this beggar, not this person that I don't really know what he gonna say. It's either in his will or it's not. But like I said, even in that piece about, there's a difference between can I have versus going, daddy, I need. Because I already know you're going to supply the need. You already knew I needed it. You already had it set aside for me. You were waiting for me to come in the house from playing to get it. But again, you struggle to get to that place. I've struggled to get to that relaxation because I didn't grow up in it. I had to ask for stuff. You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of, like I said, disciplinarian, so there were rules and it was some strictness, and those after me didn't have to have as much as I had to, but it was like, look, y'all welcome. I wrote some stuff for y'all, but yeah, I think that is so key. So even in that, so now, Laverne, with your father,
let me say one thing before you go, and it allowed me to see one thing. You can tell the difference between a girl that's had a dad in her life and the girl that hasn't. There's a very big difference, because one thing I know about, and I see that in my children, because my husband has always been very, very present in our life. When you have a daddy's girl, they walk in a level of confidence and a level of security that a lot of girls don't have. They are secure about themselves. They are sure about themselves. They're not, paranoid with a lot of different things. And their stance in life, their success in life, and not to say that they're the rest of them are not success, but you can tell the difference between having the daddy there all the time and not, because when dad's not there, we have to overcome a whole lot of things, because there was a lot of things we missed because he was not there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things, that I missed because he was not there, and so later on in life, yes, God did give me that. But I used to, like you said, Monique, when they would have like daddy daughter stuff, my uncle was always one that always went, but I always felt some kind of way because he wasn't there. And I knew that was not my dad. And so, you tend to have this feeling some kind of way because they're not there. But one thing God did, he always stepped in and he healed that part. Mm-hmm. Because if that part is not healed, it develops into a whole lot of other stuff that's not positive. But when we allow him to heal us from the inside out, it's like the scripture says, when my father and mother forsake me, then the Lord takes me up. He comes in and he steps in and he takes up from where they were not. He is the ultimate father. He is the one that created us. He knows us more than our dads know us. So that's why we should always go back to him. Hey, Dad, and I call him now. I've gotten to the place where I call him Abba. I call him Dad because that's what he is to me. And so when I lost my mom this year, it was times where I knew I could go and crawl into the Father's arms. And I knew that he would hold me. Why? Because I have that relationship with him now, that he is my father. So I just wanted to say that part.
That's good, because you actually touched on one of the pieces that I wanted to bring up about the whole security, because I can't remember which one of you touched on it, but it was about how he sees you. And, when you're present with your father, they're more around, so you're able to see that, they're able to sense when something is off and be like, hey, what's going on with you? Because they know the difference in how you usually are from how you may be in that moment, and they'll recognize that, and they'll call you in even when you're not, I ain't come tell them, but it's like, hey, what's going on with you? And so even that lets you know, I see you, I care, and it reinforces that you matter. So there is a sense of security that your father, being in the home provides. But some people had their fathers in the home, and although he was in the home, he was still absent.
Yes.
It's a big difference. It's
a big difference. Yes.
Yep. It's a difference between you could be present and then you could be there. Right. So, because I have the same thing with friends. And actually, when I thought about it in reference to my previous marriage. So, they tell you to kind of look for things that is similar to how you grew up. So you kind of be on the same page, equally yoked, all that stuff. So by me being in a 2-parent household where my parents were very present and there, when I met my ex-husband, his parents were still together even 10 years longer than my family and so forth. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's awesome. Like, this is great. We have the same mindset, the same, understanding. But when I was deep into the marriage, that's when I realized being around my family, being around his family, is that his family was there. His father was there every day, but he was not present. And that made a big difference in how he was raised and how he saw marriage and family and balancing the outside from the inside. So even with men, it makes a big difference. That's why that relationship with God is so very important, because he fills those gaps.
That's good.
It's definitely something, because that confidence, you're right, Monique. And Sherelle, like I grew up with confidence. I grew up secure. I grew up safe. And those, when my father passed away, like, even though I was married when he passed away, it was so sad. But I felt those were the main things that I thought about. So if something happens, who do I go to? If I worried about being in the house by myself with the kids, because my dad, like, even if he's on the other side of town, if I called him, he was there in 2.5 seconds. And if he couldn't get there before before in time, he made sure somebody else was there until he got there. So that security is what you get from a father, that accountability, you know, because you don't want to disappoint them. You know, that's how I knew if my clothes was too tight or too short, if I didn't feel comfortable walking past my daddy. So that was my judgment when I bought things. And when I tried on clothes, if I felt like if I walked past my daddy, what would he say? And he would say something crazy, I knew that outfit wasn't for me. So all of that stuff just comes with the relationship. But you still have that with God. Because when I'm working with different women and they say that, like, well, I didn't have my daddy, I don't understand what that means. I get it. So that's when we start walking through scriptures so that you can understand that he provides for you. You know, he protects you, he shields you from danger. Like he comforts you. You know, if you're crying, he's gonna wipe all your tears, like all of that stuff. And the most important part that I can say that they miss is that guilt. Like they feel like because we're taught that God is just so, you know, above us, they don't want to be disappointed. They don't want to disappoint him. But the thing with having a present natural father and with God is that they will allow you to make your mistakes, but the porch light is still on when you're done. So you can always come home
with the porch light.
Yes.
You can always come home after you run the streets, you doing whatever. That's fine. But I'm here. I haven't went anywhere. So you can always come home. And when you come home, make sure you got a hot bath, make sure you got a hot meal, you got some new clothes. Like, I'm gonna make sure you're good. And we're gonna try to walk this thing out differently the next time because now you know. So when they get that understanding that, yeah, he gonna tap you on your hand, but he also gonna make it better for you. And he's not gonna judge you. He's not gonna make you feel like you're worthless and dumb because you made a mistake. Like, no, you're a child. You a child. Yeah, right. It's my job to clean you up and get you back on your feet.
Yes.
So
let me
father you. And
let me father
you.
We miss that. So again, our relationship, when we think about God and, you know, when we see him, we literally look at this. There's a fear of getting in trouble, but it's a different kind of trouble that you're fearing in that instance. You know what I'm saying? And it's this. Even some people who they had, you know, I may have had my dad, but our relationship was kind of, and that becomes a relationship with God. I called my daddy, even though he wasn't in the house. And this may not have been your relationship, Sherelle, but there are some where I called my daddy when I needed something and mama couldn't do it. And so their relationship with God literally mirrors that. I go to him when I need something. He's not somebody I have a consistent or a daily conversation with. Because like me, I'll be sitting up and I'll be chilling and I'll be like, yo, God, so like I literally, you know, that's why sometimes people be like, okay, let's pray. I'll be like, hold on, let me get in the mode, because you know, my conversation with him don't be like, oh, Heavenly Father. I don't talk to him like that. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right. You're not
the way I talk to him. So when you be like, Mo, come pray, be like, let me get in the right mode to do this thing you try to do over here, because my conversations with him are different. When I'm upset about something, it's the same thing. Like, yo, didn't you know that was gonna happen? Hey, I thought you called me to be a prophet. You couldn't show me that in advance, so I could have just skirted on around that thing. Like all of that. So like I have those real life conversations. Now the interesting thing is that you both had different relationships with your father, but you were both daddy's girls. Y'all had different setups, different situations, and everything. And you both are or were married, and one still is. So how would you say your relationship with your father, with God as father, and your husband mirrored? Because one thing you said, Laverne, was when your father passed, you was like, so what about, you know, I'm being house by myself. I'm like, you in a whole marriage with a whole husband, and you like, I'm the kids.
Which is why I'm like, not married now.
Dude, you ain't even exist.
Yeah.
So how did those things affect that? Try to wrap it up. We got a little time, but you know, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it real quick. Is that
don't rush? Be good.
Okay, so I would say I didn't have that Abba father relationship until after my father passed away. So at that time, I was just correlating my marriage to what I saw in my household. So according to how my father treated my mom and how my father treated me is what I was looking for in my marriage. And it was like that when we were dating, but when we were married, it was totally different. So I didn't feel for me to still have to come to my father for things, let me know what I was missing in my marriage. Like I didn't have somebody that was always there, you know, and somebody to have a conversation with, somebody to make sure you were safe and you were protected and you had, don't get me wrong, he's a good guy, he's an amazing father, but as a husband, there was a disconnect from what I grew up in and what I saw and what I felt, because the one thing my father told him, you know, he explained this to me, my dad did, is when he asked him for my hand in marriage, he said, if you can't take care of her the way I take care of her, leave her where she at. So if that that meant more than financially, that meant emotionally, mentally, everything. So I didn't have that. So now that I have this Abba Father relationship, it's different, and I feel more prepared for marriage. Like I feel as if God was able to show me some things that I didn't do right, that I had to be accountable for as well, and to heal me and make me whole from that. And also what I deserve. Like, what does it look like to have a kingdom husband, a husband that I ordained for you? You know, a man that's assigned to cover you and to match your assignment here on earth. Like, it's a difference when you develop that relationship with him as father, and you allow him to show you who you are, how valuable you are, and your purpose on earth. Then when you are waiting, because we don't look for them, when we are waiting for our husband and they come into our face, we're able to say, no, that's not it. Nope, that ain't it. Oh, there you go. Different. So I feel so much more prepared now for whenever he sends me my kingdom husband, because of the relationship that I have with God now. So it's a totally different outlook on things.
Wow.
Now, Sherelle, you still, you know, you and Apostle Larry still kicking it and all that good stuff. So how did your relationship with your father and your relationship with God tie into your relationship with your husband?
Well, I think, like I said before, mine changed when I got a chance to see what a healthy marriage really was. And that healthy relationship with Christ really, really was, especially, in living with them, that was really my beginning of healing process, from, a lot of the things that I had went through, from the past. But I said I married my soulmate. I married the one that God had for me. So when you look at his side and my rib, that was right
there. Right in, nice and neat. You don't need to shave nothing off.
No,
you need to force it in.
It's like a puzzle. It fit right there. Just fit right there.
I love it.
So after seeing that, I had to make some adjustments. I really had to make some adjustments because my husband came from a two-parent household. Plus, they were his parents were pastors, and so my husband was very loving, very affectionate, and I was not. Because although I was a daddy's girl, we were never around. We were never like touchy, feely, that kind of. And I was never, so I wasn't like that with my husband. So he would want to open the door. I would just go up and open the excuse me, can I open the door? And so I had to learn a lot of different things because, he gave me, it says, you want a husband like Christ loves the church. So, and that's what I had, but I didn't realize that I had that because up until then, I never really saw it really demonstrated, before my eyes until I married, my husband. So my husband was the one, he opened the door, what do you want to eat? And, my thing was, well, what do you want? You know, he was like, but
Female.
you got an opinion. What do you want? No, what do you want? I want. So, you know, and then I had one, you know, let's go out, let's do this. You know, he catered to me. You know, if I wasn't feeling good, it was like, oh, well, you know, I'll fix dinner for you. So I had to learn how to be loved. I had to learn how to be loved. And so now, I stuck it all up. But before then, I had to learn that. I really had to learn that because I didn't know that. So, you know, he would want to walk, you know, we first got married, he wanted to walk and hold hands. I was just used to walking down there, just walking, and he's like, give me your hand. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, but to see me then and to see me now, you know, it was it's just totally different. But I have that God-fearing man. You know, and I'm not saying that because you know, all marriages go through their stuff, you know, but for the most part, you know, I had that man that when you looked at Christ and you looked at your husband, you saw that mirror.
That's good stuff. And he like, come here, let me cook for you. Yes, Daddy. I'm trying to drop this quarantine 30, 40, 50. But if you gonna cook, I'll make a little room for it.
Yeah, so I think
touched on a couple of
go ahead.
You touched on a couple of things in that. One is, again, no matter what, he always sent a representation to you, and he was always teaching you whatever it was you didn't learn from the original foundational relationship. Yes. He continuously showed you, even through your husband, like, come on, let's hold hands. You like, hold hands, like, dude, what's wrong with your hand? Do it hurt? You know, you need a massage, like, what's going on? But to have someone who will reflect God's love and his patience towards you, that is truly a gem. Another thing you touched on that I thought was key was the difference in, so one thing Laverne said was how, you know, you didn't really see God as Abba to that degree until after your father passed. That's what introduced you to that type of relationship. And so something you said, Sherelle, was, you know, this is how it was with your biological father. Then you connected with Bishop and seeing the godly marriage and all of these and different things. And what was your father's relationship like with God?
Oh, he didn't have one.
What about yours, Laverne?
My dad and God were tight. So, you know, he wasn't, my dad was one of those people who, I believe he was a prophet and he didn't know it. He didn't know it. You know, he saw things before, you know, he just saw things, he sensed things, he knew things were coming. Everything that he said was happening came to pass. And he read his Bible faithfully. He taught us how to pray. And we went to church every Sunday. Now we didn't like grow up in church, meaning that we were at all these ministries and we're there 3-4 times a week. But every Sunday, if you lived in his house, you had to go to church. And his thing, you have to believe in something while you under my roof. So his relationship with God was very strong, and it was very personable as well. And I don't even think I understood it until after he passed away, how deep it was.
Wow.
And I think even in the description of the two, it kind of, so for Sherelle, you had to, even in the thing of fighting for your relationship with your dad, you had to even fight for your relationship even with God and understanding it and learning it and growing it throughout life. And so Laverne, even with you, although your dad had a relationship with God, there were some things he didn't know, and it was like it wasn't until he passed that you learned some things about your relationship with God. So I think even in those things they correlate too. And this is how even sometimes the difference when someone is brought up in a household where you're because a lot of times, unless they, and this isn't always the case, but in some instances, unless the father was in ministry to some degree or he was serving in some capacity at church, a lot of men burnt the, because you know church is full of women. There's men there. Now, there are a lot of men that go to church and that are active and so on and so forth. They don't just go to church. They are to church. They serve. They're active. They have intimate relationships with God. All of that. But sometimes a lot of them, that's the relationship. They go to church. Like my grandfather couldn't read, but he could read some things. And when he passed, his Bible, when he go to sleep at night, his Bible, it was Psalms. I can't remember which Psalms, but it was one of the Psalms that he would open his Bible to, and he would sleep with it under his pillow. So when he passed, that's where they found his Bible at, where he always would put it. He would open it up and it was turned to that Psalms and it was under his pillow. So he didn't go to church. My grandmother did. He prayed every night before he went to bed. He had his own type of relationship with God. And I think that's the other thing. We all have different relationships with God. We all have different places that we reach with him. But the one thing that I love about him is no matter who you are, no matter what you've gone through, no matter where you stand, no matter what you've done, and even when you get mad at God and you start snapping out like you done lost your mind, he is still God. He is still there opening. He is still ready to receive you, and he is still loving on you. I think God has a sense of humor because he made me, and I'm quite sure most of our conversations he be sitting up there like, this girl. And I know the angels and stuff, they get their popcorn, they be like, here she goes, she comes to the throne room, let's see what's on TV today, you know, all of that, like, because that's my relationship with him. And there's a lot of stuff that I don't get. There's a lot of stuff that I don't understand, and stuff frustrates me, and I be like, yo, dude, you can have all your kids, like everybody on my nerves. People like, girl, you got on my nerves this morning. I be like, I know, but I'm me. I'm just one person. But you know, so we all have those different relationships. And so even as we all have different relationships with our Father, no matter what they were, no matter whether they were absent, present, overprotective, because you even hear some men talk about how what they do is, man, please, I got my shotgun ready already. When she get older, some dude come on my door and all of this stuff. And you hear these different things, and you hear them talk about being protective and loving their girls and so on and so forth. And I sit back and I'm like, wow, I wish I had that. But it's like, here you are grown and still you be wanting to call and be like, something going on. Like, I would love to be able to reach out to my father and be like, hey, Dad, X, Y, and Z. And I could just imagine God being like, why not just reach out to me and be like X, Y, and Z? You know, so it's really about establishing that. And this is why it is good to have connections, and we are many members, one body, fitly joined together by what we each supply, because we get to learn from each other. Even if your mother wasn't married and you didn't get to see what marriage looked like growing up, God will put you around people who have successful marriages. And success not meaning there was no issues. We agreed on everything. We got along 24/7. It was just no matter what came up, we loved and respected and reverenced each other and our vows enough that we managed to work through it. So I just think that that is so dope. We had a really great conversation. And I want to thank you ladies for joining me tonight. And before we close out, is there anything you would like to share that we might not have touched on tonight regarding your relationship between your father and God, and what that looks like, and any tips or advice for someone who, like me, didn't grow up with their father and may still be struggling with the relationship between themselves and seeing God as Father, and even the importance of seeing him as Father and not just Master, Lord, and servant. And we'll start with you, Sherelle, and close out with you, Laverne.
Okay.
I think the one thing that, and it popped in my mind as I was sitting here, when I started dating, I went to my pastor, who was like my dad at that time. I went to him and I introduced him to this guy, and he was like, yeah, no, that ain't the one, you know? And when he said that, it broke my little heart, Monique. I was like, but I really like him. And he said to me, he said, that is not your husband. And I was like, okay, but I listened. And I trusted him enough, and I looked up to him enough to obey what he said do when he told me no. And so then later on, I think it maybe like a year and a half, 2 years later, I brought Larry to him, and he said, that's the one. We have to learn to trust God and our Father enough to know he has our best interests at heart. And he knows exactly what we need when we don't know what we need ourselves. So whoever that person is that you trust, listen, obey, because there is good on the other side of that obedience.
That's good.
That's good.
That's
And that kind of goes into what I was going to say, Sherelle, because for women who are still struggling with the fact that there is no earthly father present, the goal is that you develop a relationship with your heavenly father enough where you feel like there is no void left in your life, right? But I know that it's not always easy for everybody. It's easier said than done. So what I would suggest is that when you pray for spiritual parents. So those will be parents in your life that God sends to you that can guide you through the rest of your life or for a season spiritually. Because I have those. Like I had a spiritual mom and a spiritual father that I didn't get until my parents, both my parents are deceased. My parents passed away. And that's the same thing. So when Sherelle said that, I'm like, that's it. That's literally it. Because I've dated, when I dated somebody and he was from the church, since my divorce, I brought him to my spiritual father and he said, nope, that's not it. And I did not listen because I'm like, but same thing you said, but I like him. He said, trust me, what God is saying is that's not him. Because of the woman that you are, you need, and you have children, you need a different type of man. Not saying he's not a good guy, but he's not for you. And because I didn't listen, I put myself through some heartache because I did not pay attention. So now, anybody that date me know we can't even get to the next level until you meet my spiritual father, because that's all we're looking for is covering. That's all we're looking for is support. Protection, like somebody has eyes on us, because people, especially men, when they with the wrong type of man, when they feel as if that nobody's watching over us, they feel as if they can kind of reign over us. So when all I need to know is that it's somebody paying attention to you and watching your every step and that cares about you, and they're going to treat you very differently. So pray for spiritual parents, and God will send them to you.
Girl, that's the whole world. You might mess around and have me bring you back for our date the after 40 such. Wait, have you hit the 40 range yet?
I'm 38.
Oh, you got a couple years. But next month we'll be dealing with dating after 40. What in the world does that look like? So
I can be a part of that. I still date.
No, ma'am. No married women on the panel.
I still date. But look, I'm going on the date tomorrow, so and I'm over 40. So don't count me out, Monique.
Listen, I cannot wait to have that conversation. We gonna have some of the brothers in there. So next month will
That's
be
gonna be a hot mess. That's gonna be something else.
That's gonna be good.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I am so excited. Thank you, ladies, so much for sharing your journeys with us, for sharing your wisdom and your experiences, and for your tips and your wisdom for those of us who grew up without our fathers. And listen, I just want to say to all of those out here watching and listening who will catch the replay, whenever you catch it, listen, it all boils down to there is nothing you cannot take to God. There is nothing you're going through that he cannot understand. Listen, he knew it before you experienced it. He already had what you was going to need to get beyond it. Whatever pain and things you have experienced in your life, I dare you to take that to God and ask him to help you heal so that you can move beyond it. You have a choice, and that is either I can labor in this pain or I can release it, move beyond it, and live in the joy that God has set up for me. He knows exactly what you experience. He knows exactly what you're going to experience. He knows what's ahead of you. He knows what's behind you. He knows the stuff that you didn't experience, that you don't even understand. You don't even remember anymore. He knows all of that. And it is his greatest joy to see his children walking upright. He loves us. He is there for us. He is our provider. You don't have to be afraid to ask. You ain't got to go to him nervous and trembling. And yes, everything that the Bible says as believers, it is true. However, get an understanding of what it is for yourself so that you can see and understand and know God for yourself. It is a personal relationship. And if I had 10 different people on here, male, female, boy, and girl, everyone would describe a relationship different. You got Mark, Matthew, Luke, all of them talking about Jesus from a different perspective, from how they experienced the same time frame with him. So God is just that great. There's so much to him. And even in a lifetime, we still want to explore all of him. But we can posture ourselves to receive as much of him as we can. And he'll increase our capacity even more if we continue to seek out and search for him. So again, thank you, ladies, Sherelle and Laverne, for joining me tonight. And thank you to all of our viewers and all of our listeners on the replay and all of that good stuff for tuning in. And until next time, we'll be back next month, the first Friday and the third Friday. They will be live, and we will be talking about dating after 40. What in the whole world? Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I will be there. Of people that have already agreed to be on that panel, so I have no idea where that conversation is going to go, but we are going to have a good time exploring it. Don't worry, that cough was not COVID. She is still safe. Amen. Hallelujah. So again, thank you for joining us for another episode of Confessions and Conversations. Until next time, thank you for hanging out with your girl, your host with the most, your favorite chick to chit chat with, Miss Mo. See you guys real soon. Keep it kingdom, and remember, I love you. See ya. Hold on, ladies.